Namaste and welcome to another episode of Itihasdhir.
So the book that we're doing today is Kashmir Under 370 by Mahendra Sabharwal. So this is a personal history of Jammu and Kashmir under Article 370 as seen by the former DGP, that is the Director General of Police, Mahendra Sabharwal, and he has written this with Manish Sabharwal. And we will go through this book with you and essentially try to find what changes the abrogation, or rather the shortening, I would say, or the dilution of Article 370 has brought in Kashmir. What are the ground realities today as opposed to what they were well under Article 370? And yeah, so first of all, before we start, as the book says on the cover page, this is a personal history, which means this book is not very data heavy. It is not, it focuses on the personal experiences of the person who's written it, that is Mahendra Sabharwal, as the DGP of Kashmir, and while he was serving there as a police officer, as a member of the IPS. So, yes, that is one thing you need to keep in mind. There may be a lot that you think you do not agree with. That is okay, because a lot of it are his opinions as well. But where he gives his personal experience related to factual happenings, rather than his own, vision of, say, why it happened, perhaps, you will at least gain a lot of understanding and a lot of facts from these books. So, yeah. So,
Okay, so we'll start with the title and the most basic part of it. Article 370. Why is it such an issue of contention? Why is abrogation of Article 370 becoming such a contentious thing? I mean, it gives the state a special status, but special status for what? Like, after all these years, is it really a necessity?
So the thing is, when we read this book, one thing is actively clear, that the status of Article 370 was diluted again and again till 2019,
Hmm.
when at once all of its power was snatched away, right? And the problem, well, I don't see the problem with that, honestly. As a personal opinion, I think that I agree with the stand that एक नेशन में दो निशान, दो प्रधान और दो संविधान नहीं हो सकते. But then this book delves into that as well, and I think, see, the problem with the delusion has always been the public perception that is created by a few figures. So when you read this book, one thing becomes actively clear, that is the kind of magnetic pull and the kind of influence that a few people in the Kashmir geography exercise upon the community as a whole. So when you see the book and you read the chapter on when Mahendra Sabharwal was working as a member of the IPS under Sheikh Abdullah's regime.
Hmm.
And he talks about how there were two, factions of sorts. So there was one faction that was Sheikh Abdullah's faction, that was called the Sheirs, and there was another that was led by I think Mirwais Farouk, if I'm not wrong, which were called the Bakras, or the goats. So there were two warring factions, and you will see how much, influence separate leaders exercised on different communities in Kashmir. Kashmir has, and this book also talks about that, Kashmir has always been thought as a, single religion, single identity sort of a state. But Kashmir by itself has had a lot of identities, right? A lot of them
Mm.
might not exist today in Kashmir because of a lot of what happened in Kashmir, but then it has always had a lot of identities. The name Kashmir itself comes from the tapasya of Rishi Kashyap. It was the karma bhumi of Rishi Kashyap, right? And from there to, well, the Butshikan Sikandar Miri and his killing of so many Hindu pandits that they collected, I think, 20, more than 27, 28
Right.
grams of kalava to,
Exactly.
well, the 1990 exodus and genocide. So, I mean, there has been a lot of change, yes, but Kashmir as a whole has had and remains to a great degree not a state that has a single identity, right? So
Mm.
there are a lot of these leaders who exercise a lot of influence, which creates a lot of warring factions in Kashmir. That also leads to a lot of crime, by the way. So this perception that 370 हट जाएगा तो तुमसे तुम्हारे रिलीजन का राइट ले लेंगे, तुमसे जो है it is you know percolated like that, it percolates like that. These leaders tell the common, and see, whatever you can say, but common जनता के पास क्या सेल्युलर नेटवर्क और इंटरनेट नहीं है क्या कि वो लोग पढ़ सकें कि ये क्या करने वाले हैं? Hey, but then you can't expect that a normal person from the population would open up bills and read them, or open up acts
It's
and read them.
not
That
just
is
that
the problem.
conspiracy theories travel faster. You and I both know that. People love diving in conspiracy theories. So there was this after the abrogation of Article 370 when they were setting up meters on electricity poles. I think you would have also seen that video. The women had surrounded the officers and like they were basically pulling out all the meters key, like, you're basically taking away things from us and all that. Now, how how is that taking away things? Technically, जो states के surplus आपका electricity and water होता है, that is given to Kashmir. You're
So
basically getting all that for free. Yeah.
if you see the data, this is something that I came across reading. I think it was, I don't remember. I think Synergy Kashmir or some website. It talks about the disparity. So when we talk about the population versus central help disparity, as in how much population there is versus how much help a state gets from the center in terms
Mm.
of its finance, grants for aid, all of that, there is a huge disparity. Despite possessing, I think, only 1.5% of the population of India, it gets about, if I'm not mistaken on the figures, it gets about 10% of the grants for aid among Indian states, which is a lot. So that is on the same level, by the way, as two categories of states. One is West Bengal, the other is the Bimaru states, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Rajasthan. So with
Mm.
that red corridor belt, and with West Bengal, which is a very violent belt, if you see, in terms of Naxalism and all of that, was rather, but अब कम हो गया, but it remains that to some extent. So it is on the same level as that Kashmir got grants in aid, so to say. But yes, so the book highlights two to three very important things and interesting things, which I think matter a lot today, especially in the context of elections that are coming up in Jammu and Kashmir, so to say. The first is, it is very interesting to read the so he talks about this as well. One of his first days as the DGP or as an IPS, I'm not sure which was which, but then on one of his first days, the first thing that he experiences is the taking over of the Hazrat Bal shrine by a few terrorists. And that is the same scenario on one of his last days as well. So there were two military hostile takeovers of the shrine. Um, so it highlights the nuances behind negotiating with the terrorists and with all that comes along with, so to say, living in Kashmir as an IPS officer in command. So it talks about that, which is a very, very interesting chapter to read. Also talks about the burning of the Charar e Sharif shrine, if I'm not mistaken. I'm sorry if I'm butchering the name in any way. But yes, so that when it was burnt down by the Mastgul, so that is another interesting chapter to read. But within all of that, the most important thing that you gather is the history of different organizations and different parties. So it talks about the Hurriyat conference, it talks about the Jamiyat conference, it talks about different parties, talks about Muslim, MH, I think it's called. No, Mujahideen, Hizbul Mujahideen, HM. Sorry, what am I saying? HM, which is the Hizbul Mujahideen. It talks about the different parties, and you can, through these stories, sort of gauge how much of solidarity they've always had with India, and how much of loyalty they've possessed towards India. So with the first takeover of the Hazrat Bal shrine, while the whole Kashmiri population was mourning, you will see that certain parties were defending the rights of the terrorists to be in the shrine, saying that shrines have always been centers for political agitation, and as such, armed people are also allowed to go into the shrine. Later, it turned out that most of these people were Pakistanis. So there is a lot of sort of there's a nexus between these people and between and among the foreign influences that exercise themselves on Kashmir, Pakistan ho, China ho, kuch bhi. So all of that, and it brilliantly also covers the sort of involvement that Pakistan has had with the security issues that we've had in Kashmir. Pakistan's active involvement in causing these security issues, even the inner troubles that are there in Kashmir. And a big part of that the book talks about is drug trade. One of the biggest problems in Kashmir today is narco terrorism, and that is also something that has come from Pakistan, right? So I think Abhijit and Anand and Sushant Sareen and all were discussing about this in one of the Samosa caucuses with Smita as well. Fun episode to watch always. But then, yes, so one of the biggest problems that comes up today is Punjab in terms of narco terrorism, and then there is Kashmir. So the thing is that narco terrorism today is used as psychological warfare. Now, when I was having a conversation with Colonel Ajay Raina, this thing came up again, which was basically दो चीजें, and I think both of them are covered very well in this book. The first is the psychological warfare part, which is you give children drugs and they're addicted, and then you can use them as sort of henchmen for your work. You can stop paying them, you can keep giving them drugs till the time they're so dependent that they will do anything for you to get their hands on them, right? That is the first aspect of it. The second is the smuggling aspect, which today with the use of technology has changed a lot. Earlier, and ये बॉलीवुड मूवीज में भी बहुत है, कि लोग जो है 2-2 किलो का ऐसे डफल बैग टांग टांग के जा रहे हैं with drugs and they get caught. Today you carry 2 kgs of duffel bags में भर भर के drugs, you'll get caught. ठीक है, रेलवे स्टेशन हो या कुछ भी हो. Now what is happening is that they're not using these conventional methods. They're using drones. ड्रोन्स में आप जो है एक AK-47 का राउंड कितना वेट होता होगा, 4 kg 5 kg, राइट? नाउ यू सेंड वन AK-47 across the border. I mean, Pakistan sends one AK-47 across the border with a drone. How much change are they really bringing to the status of Kashmir? Not much. One gun, right? Versus, let us say that they smuggle 1 kg of just drugs across the border. Most of these drugs come from Afghanistan, right? And I mean, the ISI in Pakistan gets it for free, so not really a lot of consideration for them, so to say. So they smuggle across the border with drones just 1 kg of drugs. How much, how many crores of money will you get for that 1 kg, right? And then those crores of money can be used within the country to purchase ammunition, to purchase machinery, to do everything that is needed, right? So that is the sort of warfare that is now going on. They're actively using technology and everything. And this isn't a part of the book, but again, my conversation with Colonel Rena, he said this. And so when Instagram and all were, newer concept, ISI was the first to sort of capitalize on this. And
Mhm.
ISI built these huge rooms with people sitting there with fake IDs and everything, and fake handles, and tweeting and spreading the Pakistani or the anti-Indian pro Kashmir independence narrative. And that is why you would see a lot of these articles suddenly pop up during 2019 and all ka abrogation as well. The thing is, India has capitalized on this way too late, in the last 4 to 5 years after the abrogation mostly, right? And now there are centers in Srinagar where thousands of Indian hackers also sit with fake IDs, and they also spread the pro India narrative. And that is needed today. All countries are doing that. We were late to capitalize on that, but then that is happening, right? So that is another major aspect. So this book is filled with examples, anecdotes, real life incidents that happened like these, that help you understand the nuances.
Mhm.
Obviously, being an ex DGP, you can't put everything into words, I think. There is a lot of read between the lines as well, in my opinion. I don't know if the author intended that, but for me, with a lot of history, it is that. But once you read this book, you definitely come out a more brilliant and knowledgeable person than you were before. There are a lot of anecdotes. I'm not going into a lot of them. I've just gone into one or two of them. If you can see my book, it is marked with these anecdotes. So I will not go into a lot of them because then this will be 2 hours long. But yes, a very interesting book to read, and I would absolutely recommend it.
Perfect. So, with this, we come to the end of another podcast. Stay tuned, and we'll be back again next week.
And we're doing the Kashmir series, so that means 2 to 3 books in Kashmir, uh, with regards to 370 and the upcoming elections. So this shall be an interesting segment, right? So please join us and see you next week.
Bye.